talking about refraction through prism. So this is a prism, and here this angle A is called refracting angle or angle of prism. Okay, now this is a glass medium. Basically this is a three-dimensional thing. We are seeing only here the two-dimensional part. So this prism is used in spectrometer for analyzing light. Okay, and the prisms are maintained in such a way that this, see, you can see here this AB surface and AC surface are the refracting surfaces. BC is the base. Okay, now here the angle with which the light rays enter, they undergo refraction. So you can see that this dotted line, this was the original path and it got refracted. So when you say a person is going like this and he went like this, okay, so his original path was supposed to be like this, so he deviated. In similar situation here also the ray got deviated. Okay, and it undergoes deviation at the other side also. So here deviation at AB and AC shouldn't cancel each other, they should add to each other. Then only they can act useful to us like a spectrometer. Okay, so simple derivation we need to go through here. You can see that in this diagram, I1 is the angle of incidence, and this dotted line, this is the normal drawn at this point M, and this dotted line is the normal drawn at point N. Why we are drawing normal means, in order to find the angle of refraction or incidence, we consider normal as the reference line. So if you take quadrilateral A, M, P and N, these two are normals, so obviously angle M and angle N will be equal to 90 degrees, or 90 plus 90, 180 degrees. You see here, this angle we are talking about, this total angle and this total angle. Okay, it is angle M plus angle N will be equal to 180 degrees. So angle A plus angle P will also be equal to 180 degrees, because the sum of all these four angles is 360 degrees. And here we are calling this angle as R1 and this angle as R2. Okay, so we got to an important point here. So this is what we have discussed. So if you add these two, so you get R1 plus R2 plus MPN is equal to 180. How you are getting this? See, initially I took angle M plus angle N is equal to 180. So angle A plus angle P is equal to 180. Now if you take this small triangle PMN, even there R1 plus R2 plus angle P is equal to 180. So these two results are taken. Okay, you can see here MPN is common and 180, they're equal to 180. If you compare these two equations, R1 plus R2 should be equal to A. So it means that angle of prism is equal to R1 plus R2. You add R1 plus R2, you get angle of the prism or the refracting angle. It's a very useful result. You need to remember that. Now we have two situations. One, the ray reflected ray and a refracted ray. Okay, a reflected ray, what is the deviation means? This was the angle of incidence. Here angle of incidence is equal to angle of reflection. The ray would have gone in this dotted line fashion. So here delta is the deflection. So what is delta here means? Delta will be I plus R plus delta will be 180. But you know that I is equal to R. So it will be delta plus 2I is equal to 180. Okay, you get this expression, delta is equal to 180 minus 2I or 2R. If it is a reflection case, you need to remember this. If it is in a case of a refraction, this is your angle I, this is some medium 1, okay, and this is medium 2. So the ray bent, you can see that these two are, you take this normal line as the reference, these are opposite angles. I must be equal to r plus delta, or delta must be equal to I minus r. This is another useful result we get from this. Okay, so we have discussed that in the previous slide that the angle is entering here. You have I1 and R1 situation and R2 and I2 situation. So because of this, you see you're getting this angle of deviation and you're getting another angle of deviation, which is this. Now you consider this small triangle, this triangle, okay, you call this point as um, some P dash point, okay. So P dash MK, this angle plus this angle will be equal to the overall deviation delta, you know, exterior angle concept. So you need to add these two. So I1 minus R1 is one case, I2 minus R2 is another case, okay, from this equation. So we need to add these two. Once you add these two, you can take I1 plus I2 common. You get I1 plus I2 minus R1 plus R2. But R1 plus R2 is A. So this is one very useful result you are going to get. Delta is equal to I1 plus I2 minus A. So let us discuss some cases here. You got this equation. Let us say that angle I1 is very, very small. So when you mean it is small, it is basically 6 degree, which is almost equal to 0.1 radians. If I1 is very small, what happens is this R1 value also will be very small. Okay. Now, as per the Snell's law, you know that mu is equal to sine I1 by sine R1. This you are writing for the refracting surface, which is AB. Okay. When the sine value is very small, sine I becomes I and sine R becomes R. You get this very useful result. But here the condition is that the value of I1 should be very small, because of which R1 also has become very small. If R1 becomes very small, in this R2 also becomes very small, and thereby I2 also becomes very small. Okay, they're all interlinked. So in that situation, what happens is you get, you know that A is equal to R1 plus R2, right? So the refracting angle will be very small. So in this situation, this is what basically you have derived, right? So in the place of I1, we can write mu R1 and mu R2. All right. So this becomes, if you take mu common, it is R1 plus R2. But R1 plus R2 again is A. So you get this very important result. Delta is equal to mu minus 1 into A. But here the condition is that the angles should be very small. Now let us talk the concept of minimum deviation. If you plot a graph between deviation and the angle of incidence I1, the graph is something like this. At every point you're getting, if for two angles of incidence you're getting the same deviation. Okay, now when you keep on changing the value, you get a value where you get the minimum deviation. This is a specific case where I1 and I2 are equal. When I1 and I2 become equal, at that particular case you get minimum deviation. Now if I1 is equal to I2, then obviously R1 is equal to R2. Okay, I1 is equal to I2 is equal to I if I call it, and R1 is equal to R2 is equal to R if I call it. You know that R1 plus R2 is equal to A, that means R becomes A by 2. So the equation what we have derived, delta becomes delta M, which is the minimum deviation. that is I plus I. Why it is I plus I means this is the formula actually, I1 plus I2. So both I1 and I2 are same here, so it becomes 2I minus A. When you rearrange, you find out, you can actually get the, for which value of incidence you get the minimum deviation, and that is equal to I is equal to A plus delta M divided by 2. So you can apply the Snell's law, you know the value of I, you know the value of R, so this is what you get an equation. So this is the condition for minimum deviation. So moving on to condition of no emergence. This is a special cases. Here you know that AB is the refracting surface. What happens is the ray enters and it doesn't go towards AC. It refracts at AB surface itself. That is total internal reflection, or it happens at the surface AB. It doesn't go to that other part. That situation we are calling it as condition of no emergence. This was the equation, right? So when no emergence is happening at the other surface AC, that means this R2 value should be very negligible. And as per the equation, what is the value of R2 you are getting? R2 is equal to A minus R1. R2 should be very less. That means R1 should be very large. R1 max value we have to find out. Now R1 will be maximum when I1 is maximum. Okay, because mu is equal to sine I by sine R. If R is maximum, then I1 has to be maximum, and maximum value of I can be only 90 degrees. So putting in this equation, mu is equal to sine 90 divided by sine of R1 max. So from here you can get the value of sine of R1 max, which is 1 divided by mu. But 1 divided by mu, if you remember, it was the value of sine theta c, the critical angle. Okay, so sine R1 max is equal to sine theta c, or R1 will be equal to maximum value. The maximum value of R1 can be equal to theta c only. So in this situation, when it becomes theta c, R2 minimum will be equal to A minus theta c. So this is what expression you are getting. Now if there is a situation where R2 is more than, R2 minimum is more than theta c, that means the left hand side, you know, this part is more than theta c. R2 minimum is in such a way that it is more than theta c. Diamond, you have got a critical angle value. Glass, you have got a critical angle value. If it is more than that, then what happens? A minus theta c becomes more than theta c, or A is greater than 2 theta c. If you maintain this condition, R1 will be always more than theta c, and always this condition of no emergence is satisfied. Always the ray will hit the AB surface and it will go from there only. It will not enter into the AC region. This dispersion, see, when you pass this white light through a prism, it is dispersion phenomena is happening actually. See, basically what is white light? White light is a combination of many different colors with different wavelengths. Now what happens is, the speed of light in vacuum is same for all these wavelengths, but when you enter into some other medium, the speed in a material substance is different for different wavelengths. So different wavelengths will have different speeds. Some will bend more, some will bend less. Okay, so red bends less and violet bends more. And also this refractive index mu, it decreases with increasing wavelength. If the wavelength is increasing, so refractive index will decrease, so the bending will be less. Okay, so this is, one is deviation, we have seen the deviation concept. One is dispersion concept. Dispersion and deviation are two different things. In a prism we talk about both. Okay, now here we'll talk about dispersive power. What is dispersive power? So when light enters through this prism, This is the original path which was supposed to be, but different light rays of different colors of different wavelengths are deviating in their own fashion. So delta R is the deviation of the red light, delta V is for the violet light, and yellow is somewhere in the middle, it is delta Y. Okay, so we can write, assuming the angles are very small, we can write individual equations. Delta R, delta Y, and delta V. It was mu minus 1 into A. In the case of red, we need to write mu R. In the case of yellow, we need to write mu Y. In the case of violet, we need to write mu violet. So the dispersive power is defined as angular dispersion divided by average deviation. When you talk about average deviation, we consider yellow as the average deviation. And angular dispersion, this numerator part, it is basically the difference of violet and red deviations. That is, delta V minus delta R is the numerator part, and the denominator part is the deviation of the uh, yellow color is considered as the average deviation. So when you take the ratio, when you find out delta V minus delta R, you take the difference of these two, this minus one term gets cancelled and you are left with mu V minus mu R into A. But here if you, when you divide it, see here there will be a term also, there will be a term also. Okay, this A gets cancelled and only this part is left. So dispersive power is defined as omega is equal to mu V minus mu R divided by mu Y minus 1. If any numerical comes, you should remember this formula. Okay, next we will move on to combination of thin lenses. Suppose two thin lenses are joined together, what happens? So here we are placing an object which is well beyond the focal length of this lens A. Lens A and lens B are very thin, so we can assume that their optical centers are almost coinciding. Okay, this O is kept at a distance which is little more than the focal length of A, because we don't want to end up with having parallel rays emerging out of that, you know. So this U is the object distance. What happens is, uh, because it's a converging lens, initially the image will be formed at I1. This will act like object for the second lens, and final image will be happening at I. Actually it doesn't happen like this. Only to understand mathematically we're writing like this. It actually doesn't happen like that. Okay, so finally when you're using two lenses, this is the object and this is the location of the final image. Okay, and this is the final, V is the final object distance. So we can write the mirror equation for the first case. Here V1 is the image distance, this object image distance, U is the object distance. So 1 by V minus 1 by U is equal to 1 by F. Mirror, in case of lens, sorry, lens formula is 1 by V minus 1 by U is equal to 1 by F. In mirror it is plus, in lens it is minus. Similarly for the second lens you will get 1 by f2 is equal to, now this is the final image distance and this is the object distance. V1 becomes the object distance. If you add these two, this 1 by V1 and 1 by V1 gets cancelled. So finally you are left with this. Okay, 1 by V minus 1 by U, and right hand side 1 by f1 plus 1 by f2. Imagine they both have a single focal length f. We can write it as 1 by f is equal to 1 by f1 plus 1 by f2. This is the combination of lenses. So what is 1 by f1? It is the power of lens 1. 1 by f2 is the power of lens 2. Add these two powers, you get the total power. If there are n lenses are there, you have to add all this. Then you get the total power. Okay, in terms of P, if you write, it is P is equal to P1 plus P2 plus P3 etc. And focal length, it is the 1 by f is equal to 1 by f1 plus 1 by f2, so on. P is called the net power of the lens combination. You can have n lenses, accordingly you have to take. So let us talk about magnification now. So each lens will have its own magnification. Let us say m1, it will be v1 by u. For m2, v1 will be the image distance, v2 will be the object distance. We know that m is equal to v by u, image distance by object distance. So if you multiply these three, m1, m2, m3, you get v1 by u into v2 by v1. It kind of forms a chain. So every time this v1, v1 will be cancelled, and only the last term and the first term will be remaining. So v by u, it is equal to m. So total magnification will be equal to m1 into m2 into m3. You need to multiply all the magnification factors. So you can see if this magnification factor is 2, this is 1.5, it is becoming 3 times, you know. So this is all it is. Thank you for the session.